Hello everyone, and welcome to Etalon. For today's video, I thought I'd try something a little different. Instead of making a doll, I thought it would be nice to make a custom anime figure. And what better character to make than Kiki from Studio Ghibli's 80s masterpiece, KIKI'S Delivery Service. So let's get started. To start off this custom, I'll be using a Nishiki no Maki Banpresto EXQ figure. This character being from the anime Love Live. Figures are made in parts, like Gundam. So for this particular figure, I wanted to have greater access to the hair on the face. How I did this was by splitting the glue within the head connection panels. For this figure, there's a split that connects the fringe to the back of the head panels. By shoving a knife in there and basically cutting away at the glue and then using pliers, I am able to detach them freely. To start off this figure, I'm going to first do the clothes. I've never attempted to make clothes from clay before, so do bear with me on this if I do get things wrong. I'll look back on it and there'll be things that I would do differently, but I tried. For the material that I'll be using for my sculpting will be a super fine Milliput, which seemed to work out really well for this. Milliput is a 2-part air dry epoxy that works really similar to traditional clay, as opposed to plastic-based polymer and Games Workshop green stuff that can be quite hard and difficult to work with. The general idea that I had for this was to create an in-the-moment like figure. I wanted her dress to be flowing and almost in the wind. I wanted her to seem as if she's in the middle of running. In making the dress, I decided to go with cake decorating technique and make just a big slab, wet my hands and basically mold the garment into the shape that I wanted to while it was drying. This sculpting was really fun to make, purely because I had no idea what I was doing. I basically was just freeballing the whole thing. But what I did was I just molded it into the skin and pushed the skirt up as much as I could to make it look like it's in motion. Then I used sticks and just stuck them up the dress and tried to make it sit up while it was still drying. Once it dried though, I got more Milliput and used a terracotta colour and filled in the area that needed a little bit more clay, and I also made the other sleeve on the arm. I wanted to say quickly as well, thank you all so much for 50,000 subscribers. I'm truly so blown away that people even watch my content, let alone subscribe. So I'm truly just so grateful. If you're not subscribed, why not? I'm just kidding. You can if you want to. I'd really appreciate it. But yeah. Using terracotta wasn't a creative choice. I just ran out of white Milliput and no supply shop in my area had white or grey in stock, so I had to use terracotta. I thought it was funny because I thought it looked like poop with the white dress, so I posted it on Instagram and people thought that it was a creative choice. They thought it was a horror doll, supposed to be blood or something like that. But no, I mean, it sounds cool, but no, it was, it's meant to be Kiki. like a child. Non-murderous child. I left the dress for 24 hours to make sure that it was solid, then I got sandpaper and I sanded it smooth. The sanding was so important on this. I always find setting down a good foundation always reaps rewards. Spending that extra time to get rid of bumps and finger marks and everything makes the figures look a million times better. Once I was happy with how it was looking, I just unified the base colour with 2 layers of Games Workshop Citadel Wraithbone paint. Usually I would use a spray paint as a base colour, but I wasn't really keen on having to protect every single area of the skin. I decided on modifying the base that the figure came with as an added bit of flair. I landed on the idea of an overgrown cobblestone style. Generally you see this old style of cobblestone that's been reclaimed by nature in places like rural European towns. I thought it would be nice as Kiki's home is covered in ivy, similar to homes you'd see in Wales and rural England. So I thought it would be a nice bit of aesthetic to be incorporated in this figure. While I could have kept the Milliput in the terracotta colour, I decided to paint them up grey just because I didn't want them to be as eye-catching as the figure itself. I wanted it to be an accent, not the main bit that you looked at when you saw this figure. I wanted there to be the overgrown look, just the same as the house. So I bought this grass medium from a hobby train shop near my house. I had no idea how to apply it, so bear with me on this. I couldn't figure out if you put the glue down first and then added the grass, or you mix the grass with the glue and then apply it. I couldn't figure it out, but either way, my hands, my face, my desk, everywhere was covered in this grass. Using tweezers, I'm able to place the grass within the crevices of the rock, and it ended up looking really nice, and I really loved the way that it turned out. For the base colour of the dress, once Wraithbone is dry, I'll be using Vallejo Oxford Blue. While it says it's blue, it's a really beautiful deep purple. The basic plan of the painting of the clothes is to have it sunlit, even if it's not. Yeah, just basically alternating different highlights and lowlights, making it look really nice. How I'll be doing this is by dry brushing lighter colours to indicate the highest points of the sculpt. Then once that's dry, I'll be using a traditional style of oil painting blending to blend shadows and highlights uniformly. How this will be done is by having a mixing pan. I'll have the purple, a slightly lighter edition of that purple, a pastel purple, and then having two deeper shades of purple as well. I'll sloppily apply the paint, swapping between the lighter shades and the darker shades, blending the colours together by dabbing it into the sculpt. Over time, this will make a really natural ombre effect. While I'll be showing this one part, I didn't film most of it because it did actually end up taking 2 or 3 days of consistent blending. It took a very long time, but I ended up really liking how it looked. While I could have used an airbrush for a similar effect, I always feel like applying traditional techniques ensures that you don't end up forgetting them. While you can rely on a machine for blending, you'll never get that unique look that you use from dabbing and using the oil painting technique. Plus, it makes you feel like you have a sense of accomplishment once it's done because it ends up looking so posh and so nice. But as well, if you'd prefer to use a machine, that's totally fine as well. I feel like there's no right or wrong way to doing these things. I just felt quite chuffed with myself for doing it. While KIKI'S delivery service has resonated with people ever since its release in the 80s, I feel it truly resonates with the grief many people find who are within the creative industries, including myself. The movie deals a lot with creativity and the creative industries and what it can do to a person. For Kiki, she leaves home with Gigi to make it in the big city as a witch. While she doesn't possess skills that can be monetized in the traditional sense, she has a love for flying. Flying, though, doesn't make money to live off, so she has to adapt a delivery service to get by. While she loves it in the beginning, overworking and pushing herself too hard ends up creating a spiraling effect. She overworks, her mental health goes down, her passion goes down, and eventually she is left drained, depressed, and feeling like a failure. Miyazaki shows this creativity drain as a drain in her magic. She slowly loses her ability to fly and her ability to talk to Gigi, which leads her to try and push the passion that isn't there, obviously, so it ends up leading her to breaking her broom. It's only taking time away that she can realize her true love of flying and her true creative passion. For me, I was at that point where Kiki was. The pressure to succeed within the creative field can be really hard. You feel like you need to push yourself harder and harder because you're comparing yourself to people within the traditional work fields. The comparison makes you work harder and harder, but the bar is set at an inattainable level that you'll just end up working until mental breakage. Sadly, this is what me and many others have been going through, especially in 2020. You feel like you have to work harder and you have to work every day from wake until sleep, and eventually that will make you happy, but it just leads to burnout. You feel like you have to keep working because you chose the field that you're in, you chose to be creative as opposed to being traditional. And you chose to be independent, so this is what you deserve, and you have to work yourself until you feel mentally exhausted. Within the last few weeks, I've seen people who have been feeling the exact same way that I've been feeling as well. I've seen TikTokers, YouTubers, writers, musicians, people within the doll community, people within the traditional art community, all feeling the same and echoing the exact same sentiments that I've been feeling, and probably you yourself as well. You want to grow, but to grow is to compare yourself to an upload schedule of traditional influences that is just unattainable and not realistic. If you take too long between uploads, you're pushed down within the algorithm. So you work and work, but then feel consistently discouraged when your work underperforms. So you work harder to fix it, but then it's a continual cycle of it just keeps getting worse. I don't know, I feel as though I was very much in the exact same spot that Kiki was in. I started working on this figure 2 to 3 weeks ago. I was laying in bed and I felt like I had lost all passion for what I was doing. I felt I wanted to delete all my art socials and I just wanted to disappear off the internet. I looked at the Maki figure on my shelf and remembered why I even started doing what I'm doing. I started because I wanted to make my own figures because I love figures and I love what I do. But it's been hard to feel that passion, especially with everything going on in the world. You feel as if you are just constantly stressed and constantly in grief, and it's really hard as well to push yourself and just feel as if you're at the same level as everyone else. I remembered KIKI'S delivery service and thought, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna apply skills that I wasn't confident in. I'm gonna take time and I'm gonna enjoy it. I truly relate to Kiki, and I'm sure many of you do as well. So I wanted to make sure I had this figure so I can sit it on my shelf in my tiny little art nook as a reminder as to why I study and why I create. And it's because I love it and I love what I do. I don't know, I feel like this is a bit too much information but I just noticed a lot of people have been feeling the same, and while that's bittersweet, I think we just need to all be a bit easier on ourselves. At this point in the sculpt, I'm just adding the details. In this particular shot, I'm just making a nose out of shadows and highlights, because the figure didn't have a nose, and honestly it was just throwing everything out of balance, and I didn't like how it looked. Basically what I'm doing is just adding some shadows to develop a nose, then adding highlights on top to create a nose bridge and some cheeks. Once I was happy with how it was looking, I'll make sure to seal it with some Mr. Super Clear Matte Varnish. Off camera, I also made a little bow and a headband out of Milliput. I also made a bag. It made me cringe going back and sculpting on already painted surfaces, but you have to do what you have to do, I suppose. I wouldn't recommend doing this. It was very nerve-wracking, but it was just, you needed the accessories and I'd already forgotten. I was just too excited to paint. I went through and basically added highlights and lowlights the same as I did with the dress. I had made a broom, but it ended up looking a little bit weird. It just didn't look nice, so I opted to leave it out. It's better to have no broom than a lump of clay in the shape of a broom. While it was already painted, I wasn't happy with how the bow was looking. I used Citadel Corn Red for the bow and the shoes, but once they were dry it just was too dark for the sculpt. I think that KIKI'S bow and shoes are quite eye-catching and they're quite bright, so it was just dragging the figure and the colour scheme down. I ended up using a red Vallejo paint, which was kind of fluoro, but it was strangely patchy, so it looks a bit bad on application, but it took about 3 coats and it ended up looking really nice. As a last step, I painted a little Gigi. I 3D printed him, but it broke, so I had to resculpt the body and legs out of Milliput. I could have printed it again, but I'm not very good at 3D printing at the moment. I will get better. I'm just going to paint him black and add his features and then add him to the base. I thought it was going to look too small, but then I rewatched Kiki while doing this video, and Gigi is actually really small, like surprisingly small. I thought he was a lot bigger, but the figure seems to work out well. Once I was happy with how the figure was looking, I'll take her photos and present Kiki, my first anime figure custom. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm truly so grateful. Let me know what you think of her in the comments below, and if you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see me make next. Feedback and suggestions are always so appreciated. As always, if you'd like to see more, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.